Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Sparks Entertainment and Art. As listeners know by now, there's a few things that really intrigue me, and I think in this episode, a lot of them come together. A couple of the things that really interest me are how the fans all hear the music in a very personal way. And so today I have three people with me who are all veterans of Sparks Entertainment and Art. We have Becky Jones, who is with me on episode 5, way back, and she really brings a literary perspective, and I can no longer listen to the song "Let's Go Surfing" in the same way. She opened my eyes up about that, and I love it. It's such a now I see it as a great song. We also have Tour Harald, who was with me way back on episode 6. So we are going way back, and Tour is someone who has really brought his knowledge of composition and arrangement to the show and has talked about how that impacts the Sparks' music. And then finally, we have Paul Barrett, who was the first person to be on 2 shows, and those were episodes 10 and 11. And we did a deep dive on the album The Girl Is Crying in Her Latte, and then we also did a whole episode where we talked about where we talked about some of Paul's theories on the meta Sparks level. One of the things I've wanted to do on this show is to start doing some deep dives just into one single song. And there's one in particular that I want to start with, and that is the song Strange Animal from 2008's Exotic Creatures of the Deep, one of my personal favorite albums. And that song resonates with me so much that it really was the inspiration for this show and for the title of this show. And there's a line where they say, "Entertainment or art, one should know from the start," which seemed to me to sum up their career and how they're viewed. But I changed it to Sparks Entertainment and Art because I believe that they hit on both of those levels. I will give some of my own thoughts about the song in a minute, but first I want to give all of our guests a chance to introduce themselves and to give a little insight into how they hear the song Strange Animal from 2008's Exotic Creatures of the Deep. I'm going to start with you, Becky, if that's okay with you. So
Thank you, Monte.
take it away.
Thank you. I'm Becky Jones. I live in the UK. I came to Sparks around the time of Number One in Heaven and then worked my way through the back catalogue. So this particular song, Strange Animal, is one that I found quite challenging to get into, not least because the first time I heard it was after a couple of glasses of wine at my friend's house through an open window, and it sounded very much to me as if though Russell was repeatedly singing Wall Street Journal, aha, ha, ha. And that couldn't really reach me at all. So it was quite a relief to discover that it wasn't a song about a newspaper. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about this since you invited me to be on the show. And it occurs to me that we are the only animal in the animal kingdom that tells stories. Stories are what connect us and sometimes divide us. And animals don't do this as far as we know. And that is what makes us a strange animal. And I think that this song is, I think it explores a complex interplay between the conscious and the subconscious and how these shape art. And also the impact on that process of external or internal criticism or censorship. And it's a kind of a three-way tug of war between the artist. Like a little diagram to remind myself. Yeah, the artist as a human being, the inspiration as an external force, and the critic, be it internal or external. And that is a sort of a long-term war of attrition rather than a short, brief battle. And I think this song sort of follows that three-way tug in some detail. The strange animal of inspiration is both separate, an external force, and also an intrinsic part of us as humans. And I think the alternating melodic and strident rocky tones illustrate that as well through the music, although I'm not a musician, so I don't really know that. It's just what I feel as I listen. It occurred to me as well today when I was reading through this that equally it could be a song about Ron's creative process, and he's the strange animal. the creative process is in dialogue with itself. So in this theory, he's the strange animal finding a song open to him. He can enter and create the song, create with the song. It offers resistance, which I think any artist would recognize, but he kind of inveigles his way in. And finally, he obviously runs out of patience with that struggle because he brands the verses boring and decides to scrap them. I must kill you all and start again, except for the chorus, which can stay. So I feel as if there's something here very clearly about those sort of layers of creativity. Oh, and the bit about the external criticism, it occurred to me fairly early on that this was the follow-up album after Young Lovers, and that Dick Around got banned by the BBC briefly, which Ron famously was incensed by. And I think he alludes to that with there was blood on his hands, and it now comes to light he'd been in a fight with some government men who were high as a kite. And
Yes.
it occurred to me that those, that's his way of kind of getting that little dig in. And it had obviously been on his mind and preying on his mind. And I can imagine him brooding about something like that, as senseless as banning Dick Around. So that's my rather jumbled thoughts about the human condition, that we tell stories and that the stories play games with us.
Well, I don't think that was jumbled at all. I thought that was quite brilliant. And the idea of the three levels of the critic and the artist and the inspiration is really something that's very fascinating. I want to open it up to our guests. Any thoughts about what we heard from Becky?
Well, I'm Tor from Norway. I find a lot of things in this song directly related to songwriting, and that connects with the music. I think it starts very monotonous. If we were around the campfire, I would start playing two chords all over and over, but you would say, "Oh no, this is dissonant," because it's actually five chords, and they change in a pattern that is hell for a musician to try and memorize. So what sounds like an easy melody has got all the subtleties that Ron always puts in his songs. And if you listen carefully, you hear there's really a lot in the music, allowing Ron to become a strange animal with a rather wild background vocals, uh, dynamics, and ending in relatively wild drums. But then that could, of course, be in the allegory. The songwriting process and the layers you're talking about, Becky.
So let me ask you something, Tor. One of the things that's always fascinated me about the song, and I've always found a little bit jarring, though it works, is the way it goes from kind of a soft song with a very clear melody to all of a sudden it just hits the power chords and it hits the power, and then it has a little, so then it goes back, and then it goes back to the power, and it's like you can almost, the volume level almost goes up in terms of how it's recorded. And what do you think that's all about? What are they trying to get at there? It's such a clear
Uh,
contrast they're creating.
yeah, well, musically, I love it. I really love it as a listener. I think I'll have to get back to it.
Okay, well, let's make sure we get back to that because I really want to hear what you have to say about that. Um, and Paul, do you want to talk about? Let you take the floor, Paul. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Monty. So, yeah, I'm Paul. I've got a YouTube channel called Meta Sparks, where what I do is I take a look at these songs, and in my view, a lot of Spark songs sound like they're about one subject, but when you dig in, there can be double meanings, and it can be about something completely different. So, this song fascinates me. I think it's a work of genius, which is obviously true of a lot of what Ron and Russell produce. my take on it is that it's about how Ron writes a song, but with a lot of nuance on it. It tells us a lot about the principles that they follow in their songwriting. So at the start, it says the lyrics are, when a strange animal with a strange set of plans came to town last July, there was blood on his hands. And that makes it feel like you're in a story. So you imagine there being an actual animal presence. It's like a horror. But if you put that storybook image out of your head and instead consider it to be Ron sat at the piano, then the whole song takes on a completely different dimension. So there's that line, it says, there are songs that are sealed that will not let you in, but he came upon a song that was open to him. And that, to me, is about, anybody can put chords together or think up a melody. And obviously Sparks are very gifted at this. But what makes them distinct, what makes them unlike any other band, are taking these unique ideas and being able to inject them into music. And I think that's what this song is playing out. Like, it's Ron taking this idea and trying to put it to music, and it not quite fitting for the majority of the song. And as Tor was saying, I think the music reflects this as he's building, as he's taking this idea that looks frightening. It also says, I can't find, there's another thing that alludes to the idea that this is a piece of music that hasn't been developed. And the whole song develops. And at the end of it, the strange animal is criticizing the song. He's saying, so he said, "Not so fast, unaware of my past. You allowed me inside. You can't push me aside. When a song lets me in, I can see where it's been, if it's broken some hearts, if it's been in the charts. But this song shows no sign of a grander design, entertainment or art. One should know from the start." And I think that says so much about how Ron sees music, how he understands what he's writing. And yeah, then finally, the twist end on the song is amazing, if you ask me. It's when it says, "You're in need of a fix or a total remix, so I must kill you all, start again, have a ball. I'm a strange animal and I find you quite dull. Here's that chorus again. That can stay. Here's the end." Which means if it's the songwriting process talking about writing this song, then the verses have been thrown away. So that's a previous draft. So Strange Animal is about a previous draft of the song Strange Animal, which is mind-blowing to me.
Becky, I'm looking at you, and it looks like you have something you want to say.
No, I was just agreeing with everything Paul was saying, which is relatively unusual, actually. I'm feeling a bit guilty that we've got the same interpretation.
I do hear some differences in what you're saying, because you brought out that point about the inspiration and the critic, which I think is an important aspect of the song, that there's a recognition of some of the comments that have been made toward them, which is something we see throughout their musical career, including in It Doesn't Have to Be That Way, which is their most recent. And it's saying, we get it, we hear you, or not that well defined. And so we hear it. But I think what you brought out is that aspect, which is really important. And Tor, any thoughts on what we heard?
Yeah, Paul made me aware of what I was thinking about when the first guitarist came in. When he says shows no grander design, and then he says in need of a fix of a total remix. Okay, so the fuzzy guitars, they are a fuzzy remix. And I also like to add that reading the lyrics, listening to the music, I imagine how this song was written. It's, of course, at Russell's home, but this time more loose in the shape. Ron is sitting there having a little writer's block. Then he plays some not too exciting chords, and being showing Russell, no, I don't think this is working. But Russell is having a great day. Oh wow, this is a really nice idea. I think if we make some harmonies here, and we could do this is think about hospitality and parade, where we just developed the song from nothing to a lot, and metaphor. Think about metaphor, where we had this rhythm going on all the time, trying to change it. And Ron says, "Okay, I'll show me how you would like to sing this." And Russell then hums, like the backing vocals and so on. And Ron says, "Okay, let's give it a try." And have yourself, Russell, have yourself a cafe latte. I'll try and fix some lyrics for this song, and inspired by that from Russell, he thinks of Russell as an animal who comes into a monotonously song. And this, of course, Russell, while they are there, he starts developing this to huge extents when they add these backing vocals. And then Ron says, "Okay, and we need a great ending, some fuzzy guitars." Some plays, and some great drums in the ending, and something like that.
So you've all brought very different perspectives, but all coming from very interesting places. And I think what Tor did, you really broke it down into the songwriting and in how they actually put the song together, and you kind of created, or you let us imagine. You let us imagine a dialogue that took place that resulted in this song, and I think it's just so interesting to hear the interplay of your three perspectives. Uh, I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'd like to bring a completely different perspective to the conversation and hear what you guys think. Let's go back to the album itself, Exotic Creatures of the Deep. All right. And what you hear at the very beginning is good morning, and a guy who's waking up and he's had an experience, and now he's saying, "Who are you?" That's what you hear. Who are you? And think about how it ends with likable, which means he's gone through a process of determining who he is, and he's okay with it. And maybe there's some hidden context in the song likable, but nonetheless, he's saying, "I'm likable," and that's okay. Um, so if this is a very early song on the album, Strange Animal, and when I hear this, I hear it in the context of this larger story. And I hear it as basically him deciding that he's going to try different persona to see who he really is. And you hear that in Let the Monkey Drive, and you could even say you can hear it in I've Never Been High, and some almost all the other songs. You hear him almost trying on persona to the point that it becomes absurd, with She Got Me Pregnant, right? The Strange Animal is in my view, is the injection of this idea that he can't just be who he was. The soft music is kind of who he was. And then all of a sudden, this strange animal comes, like you said, in need of a total remix. And the strange animal, it's an id, ego, superego kind of thing. It's a strange animal saying, "I'm going to be a different kind of person. I'm going to see who I really am." And he goes through all of these processes and all these experiments. And the strange animal is this force that takes him along this journey.
I'm so fascinated by these different perspectives, and it reminds me of some art films, and that's what I love about art, that we each get our own personal experience, and that all of them are right, none are wrong, and these aren't even they don't exclude each other. So I
Key
think
point.
it's fascinating.
Great point. And it doesn't exclude. Does anybody hear anything that is contradictory or just something that's complementary? Paul, what do you think?
I don't hear anything that contradicts that. Like Tor said, I think there are so many layers in this music. I think the idea of setting it in a bigger context and using what we've seen as songwriting, that itself can be a metaphor for something else. We don't know. So usually when I come up with these theories, it's obviously hard to back it up. But in this song, there's actually something I noticed that does reinforce the idea that it's about songwriting. And that is that there's a section in the song where in the background vocals, you can hear a verse that the lyrics aren't printed. It's different words, basically. So if you go to the part of the song where he sings, there are songs that are sealed that will not let me in. In the background, you have these indistinguishable words. That, to me, is evidence that it's a previous draft of the song Strange Animal. Because at the end of the song, like I said, it's here's the chorus again, that can stay, here's the end. So the verses have been dropped. But what's really interesting is that one of the final songs on the album is Photoshop. And as we know, that's photo editing software where you have multiple drafts. That song also has lyrics in the background that aren't printed. There are many layers. So it's almost like they're photoshopping newer versions on top of the old songs.
Now, what if Photoshop, right before that is She Got Me Pregnant, right? So
Yes.
what if that's where all this life adventure reaches its absurdity and Photoshop is tying it back to Strange Animal, just like you did? What if Photoshop is saying, I got to get this strange animal out of my life. I got to figure out who I am. And that gets you to the final song, Likeable. See, I think I think that this album is amazing. It's one of my top 5 albums probably because it's so conceptual without being a concept album, which is classic Sparks. But it tells a story in there. I think Latte is in the same class. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is these aren't just a collection of random songs, which are all enjoyable on their face. That there is a story, and Photoshop is an allegory, for getting rid of this strange animal and just being who this person really is. Becky, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean that is very compelling as an argument. There's a kind of a narrative thread running through the album. I'm tempted to think that about many Sparks albums, and this one really does lend itself to it. Yeah, I can't develop that any further because Paul's totally blown my mind with these background lyrics that I need to go and listen to now. Or listen to Paul.
I think there's a couple songs on Latte where that's the case too. I can't think of which one it was, but I think there was one or two where Paul, maybe we talked about it. There seems to be some.
Yeah, It's Sunny Today.
It's Sunny Today. Yeah. So maybe that's what to understanding them. So do we all agree that there's more to Sparks than just these wonderful songs, which can be appreciated on their surface?
Always.
Right.
Always. That's what makes me absolutely a bit wrong in the head about Sparks, because it's such a rich offering. You can spend forever just delving into any song that you might pick and pulling it apart and getting every little bit out of it. It's fabulous. And they're compelling characters as well, Ron and Russell. And so you can't help but tell stories about how they came to this inspiration to yourself. And so the source of story, which actually brings me back to my first point, which is we're the only animal that tells stories. And that source of story is so rich. It's brilliant. They're like a library.
I'm glad you brought that point back up because it was such a great one. And it really gets to the heart of this. Tor, how does this rank? When you hear the composition here, what just strikes you big picture? What does it tell you?
I try not to analyze songs when I listen to songs, but when I dug into this one, I recognized that the same tongue-in-cheek feeling you get from the lyrics, you get from the music. And depending on how well you listen to the music, you get more and more feeling of tongue in cheek. And I would say there are inside things done for very um, trained musicians to wow, oh Jesus, I didn't really hear that, but now I hear that. So, but we need to remember that I think everything Ron does is very, very thought through.
I think we all agree with you on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, final thoughts. I love this idea that we've kind of toyed with about how it, if you listen to it in the context of the entire album, then it has a certain meaning, and I think it's consistent with what everybody has said. What do you guys agree with that? Yeah.
I absolutely agree that the only line you've said that I disagree with, Monty, is when you said that um you said it's not a concept album, whereas I 100% think that everything Sparks do is to a strict concept.
So it wasn't that I didn't think it was a concept. It's just, it's not like, here's our little story that we're going to tell. It's like you have to dig deep. Isn't that one of the great things
Yeah,
about the album, though?
absolutely. It's a fantastic album, very underrated.
Um, but as a musician, when I listen to music, I think of the production as the concept, especially easy to hear on Indiscreet and the number one in Heaven albums. Uh, they're a very clear production, and so this is how I listen to it, and these thoughts that you have about the lyrics, tying them up together, then I would focus on the production of the songs.
That's great. It's true. It's true because every album has a production feel to it that's very distinct, with some exceptions. But I mean, the main albums that we always think about always have that feel to them that, there's something, they're coming from a place, and it comes across in the music and the composition and everything.
When you were talking about Ron and his sort of thoughtful way of producing or creating songs, I just kept remembering that impish grin that he does all the way through the Sparks Brothers, as if he knows a secret and you don't. And he gets such a lot of fun out of that. And that's what makes me feel as if all these discussions are actually really worthwhile. They're part of that creative process. So it's not just us flattering ourselves that we know what's in his head. He actually wants us to mess about with this. He wants to wind us up and see where we run off to. I love that.
I think that's the case because they never come out and say, here's what we intended with the album. They say, oh, it's a good collection of songs. It's, and it's our certain sensibility. They like to say that, and they leave it at that. And they want you to be the one who's doing exactly what you just said, Becky. And I think it's really a tribute to just how literary they are and how unique they are as in the pantheon of American music, or really in the pantheon of culture and pop culture. So,
can I just add something to what Becky said
absolutely.
as well? Well, before coming on the show, I knew that "strange animal" was an expression beyond this song. It's so I Googled it, and the expression "a strange animal" is a metaphorical way to describe something or someone that is unusual, peculiar, or difficult to understand. It can refer to an idea, behavior, situation, or person that stands out because it deviates from the norm or is hard to categorize. And when they say what a strange animal we are, they're talking about Sparks. It perfectly fits that definition.
I would like to say thank you very much for learning me a lot of things about this song. I've learned a lot, and also I've found a lot of new questions I need to ask next time I'm listening to this song. So thank you very much for your perspectives.
Well, absolutely. And let me just say to close, thank you all for your perspectives. I think we really got to some wonderful discussions and some wonderful points of view, and it really speaks a lot about the band that we're focused on, but it also speaks a lot about you as individuals who really get it and get that there's something really there to keep working at. So thank you everybody for listening and watching, and thank you to my guests who are wonderful. And I will see you soon with a new episode of Sparks, Entertainment and Art. Thank you.